What's going on, everybody? You know what time it is. It is time for a Two Dudes Talk Music podcast, except today I guess it's kind of like a One Dude Talks Music. This is a Raff solo venture. I am off in the US. I'm in San Francisco at the moment, which is awesome. It has been raining, but I think it was sunny. It was sunny for a moment. Just wanted to let everybody know, of course, we still have the paid subs on Twitch now. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can throw a little bit of support behind us there. And as always, like, share, subscribe on all of the usual platforms. Two Dudes Talk Music. We're all over the place. It shouldn't be too hard to find there. Got a really good one for you guys today. We have a young lady by the name of Magdalene Rose, formerly of a band called Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh. Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh was Maggie and her two sisters. They've been doing rock, metal, sort of crossover stuff since the mid 2010s. Since they were very, very young, they started. I believe that the youngest member was the drummer, who was 12 when they started out, which is crazy to me. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking with Maggie all about Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh, and her transition to now a solo artist, or touring under her own name rather than touring as a group with her sisters. And we're going to be talking about what they've got coming up, the history of Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh, all the amazing cool stuff that they've done. And without any further ado, let's get to it. Thank you so much for joining me for the interview today. Is Maggie, is that the preferred name there, or Magdalene? How do you want me to address you?
But still, it's a lot easier to say than the full name.
All right, not a problem. Now, you've been doing music and performing from quite a young age, actually. When we want to take a look at the grand scope of things, now you had performed for many years as part of Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh. From what I can tell, you were the lead vocalist, bass player, keys, that kind of stuff. I'm a bass player myself, so I'm like, you know, it's awesome. I love talking to other bass players, right? Um, and you guys started. I just want to get all this right here. So the broad facts. So you guys started in the mid 2010s, yeah? You had half a dozen releases there. So I'm looking at what I could find. The Death of Giants EP, was that the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So 2015 with that one. The Identity Crisis album in 2016. 2019, you had Oh the Horror EP and an acoustic EP, yeah? Then Operation Takeover EP in 2020 and Framing My Perception EP in May of last year. Have I covered everything, or is there something I've missed there?
That's everything.
Awesome, awesome. That is a lot to release in that time frame. Like, were you just like constantly coming up with ideas out of thin air? Or do you guys like take time to sit down and write stuff together? Like, how were you guys able to churn out so much material like that so quickly?
So it definitely was a process, and it kind of was like, okay, once we're done recording and working on one project, we're already starting on the next one, and so we would be ready and planning a release, and that whole time we were already like 3 songs into the next project, and so everybody was like, oh, like when's new music? When's new music? And you'd post and drop your album, and then the next day they'd be asking for like new music. When's new music coming
Yeah,
out? And so we're like, okay, we're just gonna stop putting out albums and start putting out EPs because they're less songs and we can do them like every year then. So it kind of became that process of where it's like, let's see how much content that we can just get out there as much as possible since people are hungry for it obviously, so we're just gonna give them as much as they want.
awesome, awesome. I do look. I have heard a lot of bands talking about that, sort of going with EPs rather than albums. There's less filler. You can focus on the absolute killer songs, and but you can definitely churn that material out a little faster. And the way that the industry is going these days, you need to always have something coming out, right? Like it's you need to drive that algorithm. You need to constantly have a new song or a new video or a new something to be posting
Yeah.
about. Because if you don't, you lose that momentum, and then the algorithm doesn't care about you anymore, right?
Right.
Like the joke used to be the almighty dollar. Now it's the almighty algorithm. Algorithm,
Oh
I
my
think.
goodness, for sure. Definitely the thing that's making the shots now.
um, And I see you guys had a lot of songs. So for those who may not be aware, Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh was you guys were a Christian. Now I want to touch on this as well. From what I could find in interviews, while you all were in your personal lives were Christian, and that definitely formed some of the inspiration behind the music. You guys don't really consider yourselves to be a Christian band as such. Uh, is that a decision that you sort of just felt was best for um, including a broader audience? Like, did you feel if you labeled yourselves as a Christian band, it would be limiting a bit because you wouldn't get, yeah, people would be like, oh, it's a Christian band. No, I don't want to, is that
Um,
something you guys dealt with or?
a little bit, because there's definitely a line we felt like we had to balance, because if you came right off
Hmm.
the bat and were like, "Oh, yeah, I'm a Christian band," and people are like, "Oh, you can't play music then, your music's not good," and it's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
that doesn't even make any sense. What? Like, being a Christian doesn't affect how our music sounds. And so I think it was something we definitely tried to make sure, like, we were open with it, but we weren't, like, gonna make it this weird thing where we're gonna shove it down anybody's throats, because obviously, music is music, and if you're not a Christian, you can still listen to the music that we created. We wanted to make sure it was a universal safe space for people. And I think doing that gave us a lot more trust with our listeners and our fans, and so we were able to be open with our faith on stage and on live streams, and
Hmm.
just even like in person as well. And they respected what we believed in, gave us our space to talk. If they had questions, they knew that we were more than open to talk
Hmm.
with them and discuss our faith, and how we saw like things that they were dealing with. And sometimes people didn't agree with us, but it wasn't like this big argument thing. It was just, okay, well, this is your walk of life, this is my walk of life, and we're okay being separate in that area.
Okay. No, that's really, really cool. I can definitely respect that. It's, it's definitely a challenging line to walk, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, you guys had so many challenges that you would have had to deal with. I mean, the being, an all girl band playing, alternative music, and with that coming from that religious background, having to walk that line, and it being so young as well. Because what, Lulu was like 12? Was that right?
Yeah.
Did I read that right? That's not a typo.
No, she was 12. I think on our first tour she turned 13.
Oh no! I can't even imagine. Like, I was barely discovering my music tastes at 13. I don't. How was that experience being out and tour, like not just playing music and playing shows, but touring at such a young age as a group? Like, how did you find that?
It was definitely, I think, more just fun for us because we were so young, and
Mm,
our parents were really big music fans, and they had never
mhm,
played music, but they loved going to concerts. And so that was something that they had always kind of instilled in us, as a love for concerts and going to concerts. And then when we started touring, they actually were able to come on the road with us, and so our mom was our manager and she was our bus driver, and our dad would come whenever he could figure out how to make his work schedule be in the same state that we were touring in. And then once COVID hit, he was able to travel a lot more because everybody was working from home, and so he could just take his work on the road with us. And so instead of being like this weird, like, oh my goodness, we're going into these crazy places, it was definitely just like, oh, like it's like a family road trip thing. We're all
yeah,
playing music together.
that must have been pretty cool. Like, just being able to travel with your family. Although to be honest, I probably, I don't know if I get along with my family well enough to have done something like something like that. If I'm being honest. But did you guys? I mean, that had to have been stressful though, right? Like being always around your family every moment of every day, not having any space apart from that. Is that something that was a struggle? How did you guys deal with, always constantly being in each other's space like that?
Yeah, it definitely, at first, when we didn't really know how to deal with it, was strange because being on the road is already like a roller coaster of emotions. You have a constant
Mm,
high when you're on stage, and then you crash immediately, like off stage, and all your adrenaline's gone, and so you just want to go to bed and not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we had to learn how to communicate with each other because we still had to, go into the hotel room, make sure that we got paid the right amount and that we were, making the right amount of money in merch and we were giving the right percentages back to the venues that were taking a merch percentage and stuff like that. So there was the business side that our parents were helping us make sure we were involved in so we knew what was going on the whole time and we weren't just like circus monkeys that were being like
Yeah.
trained around and everything. And so we had to learn, all right, this is like your job, and so yes, your own space, but we gotta have it and do the best work. And our family was always very understanding though. And if someone needed their personal space, we're like, okay, well, these people will pick up the slack, like go take your space, like take some time off. And we did school on the road as well, and so that was kind of um an easy gateway to get alone time because it's like you just pop in your headphones and say, I'm gonna go do school. And it's like, okay, well, we'll leave you alone. We won't bother you then. And um that was something that we learned especially the last few years because we were on the road a lot more is like if someone has their headphones in, that's their alone time. Give them their space. Like that is as much space as they're gonna get in a touring van. Like so
Yeah.
let them have their personal space.
Yeah, it's definitely. And I mean, speaking of studying, like that had to have been a challenge. Like trying to study while you're out there in that environment. I mean, how did you guys juggle that? Because you're essentially
Yeah,
like
it's
you're full-time touring and trying to study at the same time, right?
right, yeah. We all graduated on the road. I'm currently finishing up my master's degree, and so I'm still touring as well under the Magdalene Rose name now. And so, in January and February when we were on tour, I was doing homework in the bus, and people are going out and going to walk in the malls on off days, and just stuff like that. And it's like, well, I gotta stay in and do my schoolwork, and so it definitely can get like frustrating because you feel like you're missing out on opportunities when people are going to hang
Mm.
out. It's like, oh, I can't hang out. I got to do school. Um, but we've always had people who understood as well, and so someone will stay behind and stay and like make sure you're not by yourself and make sure you have someone there spending time with you so it's not like everybody abandoned you to go do something fun. It's like okay, someone's gonna stay back and make sure you're not the only one working. It's like everybody's working and
Yeah.
has their own jobs that they got to do, but um, off days look a little bit different when you're doing school, and then we try to make sure whenever our school was finished for the week, we'd have some like small way to celebrate, and it's like okay, well let's go do something fun because we have these few off days, let's make the most out of them, and then once the school week starts over again, then like we'll hit it hard again and make sure you have space and time to focus and also time to have like a normal-ish life.
'Cause, yeah, I mean, look, you've been doing it for a while now, so you've obviously figured out what a system that works for you and how to communicate what your needs are on the road because it's not always easy, and especially, I can speak from my experience here. Like when when you're young and you're a teenager and you're getting into music, like you don't have any emotional, intelligence. You don't know how to communicate what you need and listen to what other people need. And you just think it's all going to be fun and whatever. And then you get out there and you're in each other's space. You're tired. You're hungry. You've hung over a lot of the time, and just being able to communicate what you need on the road and hearing from other people when they're trying to communicate that is, I mean, the fact that you've got it figured out, from having done it from an early age as well. I mean, and having your parents there must have been a great support network too. It's, I don't know, I can't imagine having done it myself. It must be a hell of an experience to have gone through. But I wanted to ask too because I know you guys were based out of Florida, but you're English.
Name is English, but we don't know why. Like we're none of us are from like England or anything like that. We
What?
have no ties to that.
What? So what is all this stuff? Where did that come from?
I have no. It's just a family last name. Like all of our last names have always been English.
Right.
But
Okay. So that's because yeah. Okay. So I've obviously misunderstood what I was reading then because they're talking about like the stuff I was reading was talking about like English sisters. So I'm like, okay, they're from England. not that makes more sense now. I was trying,
Family name, yeah.
yeah, it's a family name, not a heritage, right? Okay, because yeah, that was because I mean, yeah, I'm watching your videos, and it's there's obviously no trace of any like UK accent there. So I'm like, wow, they must have moved over really young. Like, I don't. That makes way more sense. Okay. Um, so you guys have had touching back on like the Christian music thing, like a lot of your songs have done really well in the like the Christian Billboard charts, right? How many songs in total have charted on there? Do you know?
I know we had two that got really high on the Christian Billboard charts, and then that went away and it turned into something called the CMW charts.
Hmm.
And so that's like Christian Music Weekly, and so that's like the new version of it.
Yeah.
And so we had one song go number one for like a really long time. And then I think two or three, we might have had another number one. I can't remember if one of the new songs off of the last EP that we dropped went number one or not, but I know we had probably like five that were in like the top five, if not like at least two that were top like number one and stuff. There were a few that were pretty high up there.
That's really cool though. I mean, to see, even if it's because like there's all this thing about like charting, and obviously that's not what you do it for. You don't make music to try and chart. You make music that makes sense to you and that you enjoy, and then you share that with people. It must be amazing to see, to see it up there in that kind of spot, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, especially like the first time it happens, like our parents always reminded us like you'll never get those first back. And so the
Mm.
first time one of our songs went number one, like we all went out and celebrated and had this big like celebration at a restaurant, and we got these big plaques in the mail that had like the song and like the little thing that said went number one, and we made sure that it was like this big deal. And it is like very weird to think about because so many people had to be listening to the song and requesting the song, and I had enough listeners that the stations wanted to play it more. And it's
Mm.
like it's strange that so many people connected to your song and related to it and liked it that much. But it's definitely something that I'm very privileged to have experienced.
That's awesome. That's really really cool. And I mean, because you guys like you blew up pretty much like pretty quickly, right? Like, I mean, when you started like what the first EP came out 2015, and by 2017 you were touring all across the US. Is that right? That's yeah. And then like next year again, and also went over to Loud and Proud Fest in Germany. I'm just going to rattle off some of the bands that you've opened for as well. Um, so there's Motionless in White, Breaking Benjamin, Demon Hunter, Day to Remember, Disturbed, Hailstorm, Chelsea Green, Bozzy. Like, what a list. What a list. I mean, I've, you know, like they're all bands that, I know are incredible. I mean, I've been following Disturbed since their first album,
Mhm.
right? And it's to be on so many shows and tours with bands of that caliber. I mean, is that something you ever thought would be possible when you started performing, or like how do you feel about that? Because that's an incredible achievement.
Yeah, we started, I feel like there were a few of us in our family that always had a gut feeling that something was going to happen with the band and us in some like musical way. And so I always had that kind of trust and that like intuition feeling that something was gonna be there, and I was just gonna keep my head down and keep working as hard as I could until somehow we got there. I didn't know how it was gonna happen, but I had faith that something was gonna make things happen. And um things slowly started to get pushed into motion, and things that would normally never happen randomly happened. And we got invited to play on a cruise, and that's when we opened for Breaking Benjamin and Motionless in White. We were on, it was called Accident Anchors, and so it was like the sister to like Shipwrecked. And
Mhm.
um and there was no way that we would have gotten the contact. I found some random email somewhere and sent them an email at like 14 years old, being like, "Hey, can I come on your cruise? Do we have a band?" And like they were like made a bold statement, like we don't take band submissions and all that stuff. And
Mm.
I somehow got through to somebody, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll love to have you." And they called my mom and everything, and we're like, "How did this even happen?" And so things like that like just don't make sense, but somehow our band slipped through and got into those opportunities. We always told ourselves, you know, it's a God thing, and he's very involved in this band and wants things to happen. So he's pushing things into the right place that need to happen. There's no other way that we could explain it uh, other than that. And so it was always like I felt like something would happen, but every time something like that did happen, it was like this is so weird. Like never in a million years would I imagine like this was what my band was supposed to be doing. And like I
Mm.
knew something would happen, but I didn't know what. And it was like I never thought that we would get to this caliber. And um so a lot of those were like one show with the band or a few shows with the band. But
Mhm.
some of them were like long tours, and so even doing those tours you get to know the band and um like make friendships with them. And so that was like just the most surreal thing is like knowing them on a personal level more than just a band. And so like when we went on tour with Fozzy last year, it's like all of the guys in the band and like even their tour manager, like we all still follow each other, like still message each other and stuff. And it's like it's so weird, like that we were friends with people like Chris Jericho and Billy Gray and Rich Ward and their tour manager Avery is like one of my closest like girlfriends that I know. Like, and I don't have many girlfriends, and so especially having somebody in the industry who's like a powerhouse like her who can like boss her way around anything. It's like
Yeah.
this is so weird that I would have any of these friendships because I that was never anything that I thought would happen. So it's definitely weird looking at it from like hindsight is always like 2020 type thing, but yeah, it's definitely strange to think about like this is where I started, this is where I am now, and like looking at it from both sides. It's
Mm.
always just it's always weird. It never gets not weird.
Yeah. And speaking of Chris Jericho, like he basically came across the band, and he was responsible for did he? It says he personally invited you guys. Did he actually specifically reach out, or was it like his people? He said to his people, "I want
Yeah,
them," or did he personally reach out?
so we played a festival with them, and they got rained out unfortunately because there was like a tornado or something. Like it was like this
Oh
crazy
wow.
massive storm, and they had to shut down the whole festival. But when we were playing earlier in the day, the whole band was watching us. He was side stage, all of the band members were side stage, and like they were all filming us and stuff. And then we went to the merch table, and our mom was like, I need you backstage for a second. We're like, well, we gotta meet everybody. It's starting to rain. Like, we want to make sure everybody gets pictures and stuff. Like, we don't want to leave the table yet. And she's like, you don't understand. Like, you need to come backstage. We're like, okay. And everybody who was in the like line and stuff, they're like, well, we'll wait. Just go backstage if you need to go backstage. And so we went back there, and Chris Jericho is just waiting back there for us. And it's like, I want to get you on a tour. I really love your band. Like, what you did on stage was super crazy. Like, it's you guys are one of my new favorite bands now. And then he followed our band on social media that night, and then we got a call from their booking agent. Maybe like 2 weeks later. It wasn't like a super long time.
Mm.
Um, but he called us and he said, Chris Jericho told me I needed to call you because he wants you on the tour. It's like, so he's told me that he talked to you at the festival, but he wants me to let you know that he was serious and this is his personal invitation to be on the tour in this next spring. And if even if you don't want to do that, I want to be your booking agent and all of
Oh
that like
wow.
came together and he's like, yeah, so Chris wants you, Rich wants you on the tour, Billy wants you on tour, everybody in the band wants you on the tour, and so he's like, if I don't get you on the tour, they're gonna be very angry with me.
That's amazing. I mean, were you so? I mean, that's got to be intimidating. Seeing a band of that caliber stood at the side of the stage, taking such an interest in your set. Is that? I mean, were you familiar with Chris Jericho and Fozzy prior to that, or were they just kind of like you'd heard the name but you didn't really know much about them? Like, where did you guys stand with
So
that?
We knew about him more from the wrestling side because my dad was a wrestling fan growing up, and so I had just started going to wrestling shows with him.
Hmm.
We went to like an amateur wrestling match because somebody from a band that we knew was like being promoted into like those ranks and stuff, and so he's like, "This
Hmm.
is gonna be a really big fight. There's a lot of like agents there who are gonna be watching me for like moving up," and so we went to watch him, and I was like, "This is so much fun," and so my dad let me go with him to an AEW show
Hmm.
for New Year's and stuff. And so we saw Chris Jericho then, and so like that's like the only like introduction to him that I had. Like I kind of knew who he was, but not
Hmm.
really.
Okay.
But it's like I knew enough to like recognize him when he was side stage. I was like,
Yeah.
I better not fall over because I have a history of falling over on stage. It's like, okay, I gotta make sure I
Oh
sing
no.
things right. I have to play things right. I better not fall over. This stage was slippery. And I was like, if I make a fool out of myself in front of this entire band, I will
Hmm.
never forgive myself.
That's crazy. I mean, I won't go on too much about it, otherwise I'll never shut up. But I'm like a big wrestling fan myself. I'm actually in San Francisco because I'm going to AEW tomorrow night.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, it's just, and yeah, I knew him from wrestling prior to music, but it's very, yeah. I gotta say, I'm really jealous. I'm really little, like really jealous that you got to go out on tour with Fozzy like that. And it must inspire a lot of confidence too, right? Like having someone that's been doing music and entertaining people for so long to be like, you guys are amazing. I want you on the tour. This has to happen. It's that. I mean, it's got to make you feel like yes, that we're absolutely like this is amazing. Like filling you with confidence that you're on the right path with it.
Yeah, it definitely was kind of that like encouragement and lift up because when you're in the entertainment industry and in the music industry, there's a lot of critics and a lot of people that think that they have the authority to give you like criticism and like
Mm,
word it as like constructive criticism, but it's very mean by the things that they say.
yeah.
And so you kind of get used to that treatment and you learn to have thick skin really early on. And so it's always special when people like give you nice feedback and are happy about like your performance and stuff, but then especially when it's coming from somebody who has the experience, who's been in this for a long time and has been
Mm,
you know made their own way basically in the entertainment industry. It's like getting kudos from them. It's like, oh my goodness, like you think I'm doing good, like what?
mm. That's amazing. That's so good. So okay, speaking of feedback and criticism that you guys would have experienced, obviously traditionally, hard rock and heavy metal music is usually kind of frowned upon by a lot of the Christian community. Uh, Obviously, with your parents backing you, it must have made it a little bit, reinforced a little bit that it was fine and not a problem. But did you face much, backlash or criticism from your broader Christian community for playing music that is traditionally seen as like the satanic or evil music by especially much more older and traditional members of that community?
You were frozen for a second.
Yeah, sorry, no, yeah, you kind of. I'm only on a 4G connection. This is really not ideal. It was not what I had planned, unfortunately.
No, yeah. So for sure, there was definitely our good share of criticism from the church and everything, especially because of the genre and our stage outfits and just the even like the makeup and stuff that we wore because it was dark and Christians weren't supposed to be dressing like that and all of that stuff. But like I said, our parents were on the road, and if we were ever going out in something that wasn't like modest, our dad would not let us go out of the tour van. Like he would make sure we were completely covered head to toe. Like yeah, we had tailor outfits on, but we had shorts, we had tights, we had undershirts. Like we had all this stuff to make sure we
Mm,
were covered and um we had dark makeup on, but that didn't like mean anything. It's just makeup.
yeah.
And so we ran into a lot of trouble with that, unfortunately. A lot of the hate that we got was more from the Christian side than from like general market side, and So that's why we ended up playing a lot of General Market shows, and just because they weren't judgmental and they didn't care that we talked about Jesus, and they didn't care what we wore. They just liked the music, and
Mhm.
when we talked about Jesus on stage, most people cheered. Like, it wasn't like a weird thing. We never even got booed for talking about our faith on stage or anything like that, which was a blessing because I know lots of bands that have experienced that before. Um, and you know, the last couple years, and especially now, on this tour that I recently did and the tour that we're booking now, a lot of these churches are becoming more open to having rock bands and to doing outreach again, which is really, really cool because a lot of kids who are my age and younger got turned away from the church because the people who like either founded the church or were like the key members of the church, they frowned upon what the kids were interested in, and so they basically like shunned the kids out of their church, and nobody wanted anything to do with church. And so that was where our hearts were, because we knew that, having a relationship with God is super important, and we wanted kids to know, like, just because these Christians were judgmental and didn't like you because of the way you dress, that's not what Jesus is, and that's not what he stands for. And there's so much love and acceptance that comes from him, and why would we choose to, fight against that? And in the Bible it says, come as you are, not come with these preconceived notions, and you have to look and dress and act a certain way. And so thankfully, a lot of the churches, even that we received backlash from, are actually like turning their ways around and being more open, and um, like, they might be uncomfortable, but they're willing to do an outreach program so the kids will be more comfortable coming back to church, because they know that the kids like this type of music, and they know that the kids dress this way. And so um, if it's something to help their kids, they're finally willing to put that pride aside. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of it was because with COVID there was so much suicide, and it became such a dark place mentally for a lot of kids, and since they had nowhere to go, um, they unfortunately took a lot of their own lives. And so I think that has kind of forced the church to take a look at themselves and be like, we need to figure this out, because if we don't get this under control, then we're not going to have any kids left. And so I think, um, while that's a super, super unfortunate thing to happen, and we've had several calls from kids that we were friends with because they knew the band. We've had calls from their families or messages from their friends that they're unfortunately no longer with us, and that sucks so much. But I'm glad that the churches are now seeing that, and it sucks that it took that to kind of get through to them. Um, but I think we're finally starting to kind of make some progress in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that they're opening things up a little bit more and being more accepting, because realistically, you're not out there hurting anyone by performing the music you enjoy. So
Yeah.
it shouldn't,
Yeah.
you know. And I wanted to talk about as well some of the other challenges that you guys would have faced as being an all-girl band and at such a young age playing music. Like, you had an alternative music, especially because we know, we look at bands like I know bands like Baby Metal, for example, cop a lot of flack because and that's not an all-girl band necessarily, but it's fronted by the girls there. They cop a lot of flack for being young girls that are doing alternative and heavy music, and in a way that's a lot of the old school, I guess the elitists, if you want to put a word on it, would frown upon.
Mhm.
You must have had a lot of people not taking you seriously, right? How did you guys deal with that? How did you guys find a way around those frustrations?
Yeah, where we would show up and the bands would be like, "Oh, the show doesn't start till like 7," and we're like, "We're the opening band, like we're here for sound check." And so there were times like that where like that was really frustrating. It's like, why? That doesn't even make sense why you would think that way. But we learned quickly to not let that bother us, and to just like kind of let them do their own thing and let the music speak for itself. And a lot of the times, that did. And if they were standing in the crowd, you like instantly saw something change once we started playing, and then like they were all nice to you after the show, and they wanted to play more shows together, and it's like, oh my goodness, like
Yeah, of
you're
course
not
they
doing
did.
this to me.
Of course they did, because they saw that you guys kicked ass, and they regretted being that way about it. Uh, yeah, it's really good because it's again, I mean, probably because you guys had that support network, it obviously would have helped, but it's it's definitely something that's challenging. I mean, we've had a number of. I mean, look, as early on, doing music and doing heavy music, yeah, I was an idiot. Like I had this preconceived notion, like there was a band setting up once, and it was a male singer, but all the musicians were women, and I was just like, oh yeah, here we go. Let's see that. And they blew me away. They absolutely like. I didn't say anything to them because I wouldn't be so rude to say anything. But had the thought to myself, and then they absolutely like blew me away. And at that point was when I was like, okay, no, I can't have that mindset anymore. I have to grow up, be a grown up about it, and be more mature, and just say, okay, cool. The bands are on the show. They're obviously worth being on the show. Let's judge it on the content of what they're putting out there, and the quality of that, rather than just making these preconceived notions about it. But there's definitely not everyone has grown to that point, and it's sad because some of the people that haven't grown to that point are 50, 60 years old now, and they still don't want to get their heads out of their asses.
I think it's just came to the point where we just started making fun of that mindset because it is so silly to think that way. And so now, especially like with stuff like TikTok and Instagram Reels, like you can get away with poking fun at a lot of things. And we like will make jokes about it, and it makes people that think that way angry, and so they comment on it, but they don't realize their comments are just boosting the channel. And so like we're kind of, it just makes us laugh the whole time because we're like, you're just helping us, so it's okay, just keep sending those hate comments to us because it's just pushing my thing to the algorithm.
Yeah. There's a band in Brisbane where I live, and they're called Acid Cherry, and they're an all girl like grunge punk rock kind of band. And we actually interviewed the singer on an earlier episode of the podcast, and she started the band specifically with the goal of it being an all-girl band because the previous band she'd been in, they basically wanted a way to get rid of her, so they broke up, and then like a month later reformed with a new singer. And when she confronted them about it, they said, "Oh, we just don't think girls can do heavy music." So she basically went, "Fuck you! I'm going to make my own band, all girl band, and we're going to be really heavy and kick absolute ass." And they do. They are really, really good. I wanted to talk about this beauty core label for the stuff, and I know it's kind of like a tongue in cheek thing, right? Like probably not that far off what like Scene Queen's doing with Bimbo Core, and just
for sure.
being like, it's people are going to throw those kind of words around, so we may as well embrace it in a fun way. When did that beauty core label first come about?
I think it was like 2016 because we had already put out music and we were playing shows, and we hadn't started wearing the cheerleader outfits yet, but we were still in like dresses and wearing like frilly skirts and stuff, and we had already gotten comments about like it being not the same because girls are doing it and it's not as good. And so we wanted to just be like, all right, like you won't say we're metalcore. When we say we're metal, we're not metal. When we say we're rock, we're not rock. Like we're just tired of not fitting into your mold of whatever genre. So we're just gonna make our own and be something dumb and call it beautycore because we're girls. And then we started like saying it on stage and like as a joke between just us three at first, and then every band that we played with, we're like, is that a real thing? That's super cool. Like, is that your real thing? And we're like, maybe. And so the more people that were like excited about it, the more we just kind of ran with it. And it definitely is similar to the bimbo core thing. And so I've talked with Scene Queen a little bit online, and it's definitely like the same mindset of like, okay, well, we're just gonna do it, and if that way if you're making fun of us, at least we know like we're in on the joke now too. Like it doesn't affect us anymore because we took the joke and it made it our own now. It's not yours anymore.
That's awesome, and I'm glad to hear you guys talk and engage with each other. Have you guys looked at ever doing like some kind of tour together or some shows together at all, or what?
I love that because I found her before she like really really blew up. She already had a bunch of followers, but it was before like her collaboration with Set It Off and everything. And I was like, who is this girl? Like, I want to know who she is. And then I found her on Twitter and like just responded to a few things like in a row. And I think just doing that, I hit at the right time and she responded. I was like, no way she responded to me. And so we followed each other and so now I just keep up with her on Twitter every once in a while and like I'll ask her or she was asking like where to get backdrops and stuff and I was like, well we got ours here and and stuff like that. And so I would absolutely love to do something with her. I think that would be such a fun thing. But she's pretty booked right now, so I think she's doing
Oh
some
yeah,
really big things.
yeah. She's
She's doing
going
some bigger
crazy.
things than me right now.
Hey, but you know, whether it's a show, a tour, even just a collaboration on a song, that'd be really a really nice blending of stuff. I think you guys should definitely try and set that up. If anyone from Scene Queen's team's watching or listening, just make it happen. Not that I don't know.
Contact me.
Contact them. Get in touch. Get in touch. That'd be amazing. Because yeah, I'm a big fan of her stuff too. You know, and I like over the last sort of few years, I've really sort of tried to broaden my horizons and find just weird sounding stuff. You know, metal that sits in weird pockets that aren't really there. Like so, bands like Bloody Wood out of India, those guys are incredible. Obviously, baby metal got very into them since they've come about. Even going back into previous stuff and finding bands that sat in weird places that you know they didn't kind of miss the trends, just kind of passed them by a little bit, but they're still really really good and they got a unique sound. And I'm all about it because I love showing people that stuff. You know, and that's one of my like people talk about their love languages. One of my love languages is being here. Listen to this amazing song,
Yeah.
and because I love pissing off the elitists as well. I love pissing off metalhead elitists and showing them this kind of stuff. And then they'll be like, "What the fuck is that, bro?" And I'll be like, "It's good. It really is."
Yeah.
And it's where it's going. You know, that's one of the things I've always loved about metal is that it can be so diverse. It works with everything.
Mhm.
You know,
There's
so
even like alternative stuff now. People are mixing
yeah,
country music with metal, and I'm like, this is so fun. I
yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
Now, like that country metal stuff, like I mean, it goes back ages. You can go back to like Rebel Meets Rebel, where the guys from Pantera did the album with David Allan Coe, or when I think Metallica did some stuff with Garth Brooks at one point. Like, there's, it goes back so yeah, I love it. I'm all about it. And I mean that probably comes from my background. Like, I grew up as a new metal kid, so the blending of rap and metal was always a thing. So I was never afraid to look at metal blended with other stuff. Uh, and yeah, so like you know the gold, frankincense, and myrrh stuff is absolutely on my list when I'm showing people cool stuff they may not have heard now, and I'm really keen to see what comes out next. Speaking of what's coming next, I believe you've got a single that's just about ready. Is that right?
Yes. Would be allowed to announce the date of it really soon. I have a Patreon, so they actually already know. I was allowed to tell them.
Ooh, okay.
So they get like secret information first. So I was like, I talked to my label. I was like, can I just tell somebody? Because I need to tell somebody. So they're like, well, you can tell them. Just don't tell. Or tell them not to share it. So I should be allowed to announce like within actually the next week or so. We're gonna hopefully start posting some information for everybody. But yeah, it's very similar to the GFM stuff, but it feels just like kind of an evolution of like where it would have gone next.
Hmm.
And it's very still tongue in cheek. That like pop punk meets heavy and those like driving choruses and stuff. And we were trying to come up with a name because we're like, okay, well, it needs to have like this really cool name and has to be like really tough. And then we're like, well, what if we just like got really dumb with it because there's a line that uses shark in one of the verses, and I was like, well, it can be like really dumb, like use something like Sharknado, and someone threw out shark spray, and they're like, well, because it's kind of like about people who are hating on you, so like, what if you like pull out your shark spray and like sprayed away the haters, and we're like, okay. And so
I
like we
love that.
put it as a placeholder as Shark Spray, and I was playing it on the tour, and I was like, this is an unreleased song. It's called Shark Spray, like Holy Shark Spray Batman, and everyone was like, oh my word! And so I'm like, I guess we're sticking with the name.
That's very, very cool, and I dig that. I mean, I'm all yeah. I love that idea. I'm really, really keen to hear it. So you basically, the new stuff is going to be, for now at least, is similar enough to the GFM stuff. So if people were fans of GFM, they're likely going to be fans of this new stuff. I wanted to ask about that as well. Are you for going solo, I guess, or going out on your own like this? Do you Are you just kind of writing everything and then getting session people, or do you have a band that is it's the band, kind of like Bon Jovi, right? Like it's the band, but you're touring under your name.
I'm working with the guys from Seventh Day Slumber, so they're another band. They're from Nashville, Tennessee,
Mhm.
and they brought us out on our first tours with GFM, and our first like actual tour, and then our first like acoustic and West Coast tour type thing. And so we've always been really close with them, and their drummer and their most recent guitarist are really close to my age. And so I've been working with them a lot because we have the same musical interest, and they were really involved with the last GFM project. They helped produce it and record it and stuff. And so it was already like just an automatic, oh yeah, I'll work with them again. And so we've been going to the studio because they have a home studio in Nashville, and so we'll just go in and work on ideas. And I'm home for a few weeks now, and so I've been sending them ideas, and they're gonna send them back to me. And so it's a little bit different with GFM because we would normally like just go like 2 writing sessions and write
Mm.
with people, and this has been very much just reliant on me, Blaze, and Weston. And so that's been a big change because it's a lot more responsibility on the three of us instead of like, okay, well, if I can't come up with something, like we'll just take the idea to the writing session and we'll figure it out there. It's like, okay, well, no, you kind of have to figure it out because there is no
Yeah,
session after this. This is the final session to figure everything out. So that is who my band is right now. It's Blaze on drums, Weston on guitar, and then I have a bass player named Eli, and he's talking about moving to Tennessee, and so he'll be closer, so he might be able to come in and do writing the sessions and stuff. But when he's in town, he does like the bass on the records and stuff, so that way I can focus on making sure the melodies are right and the like singing cadences are right, and that way I don't have to worry about coming up with singing and bass lines now, which that has helped a lot too because I'm not multitasking in several different areas. Like, okay, I got to think about, okay, can I play this live? Can I do it at the same time? So that's been definitely a breath of fresh air, not having to do so many different jobs. But it's very strange still. I'm getting used to kind of having it a lot easier.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you found a good group of people that you can work with, because it's very, very challenging, and it's easy to feel that pressure when you are trying to cover everything yourself and trying to get out and do all of that. And okay, I got to ask about this one. I got to ask about this one because in the research I was looking up, and I don't know if this is something that you're continuing now that you're gone solo with it, but you guys would throw cupcakes into the crowd.
Yeah, so
Is that
so
like every
we
single
played a
show?
show.
Like,
Yeah. It wasn't like from the beginning we didn't start doing it. We played a show on the guitar player, and she also sang some. She was my sister CJ. We played a show on her birthday at a festival, and we're like, okay, it's outside. She was like, I want to throw a sheet cake. And we're like, we're not throwing a sheet cake. Like, that is so messy, and we'll get in trouble. Like, we'll get kicked out. We're not doing that. And then we were like trying to figure out what we could do because we're like, well, we have to do something because it's your birthday and we're playing a show on your birthday. Like, who wants to work on their birthday? And so we're like, we gotta find a way to make it like this big deal. And she's like, well, what about cupcakes? They're smaller and like it's easier to catch those and it's not like wasting so much food. And we're like, okay, well, that makes more sense. And so we literally just had them for her birthday, and someone was throwing them and people were catching them in the crowd and stuff. And we had a show, I think 2 days after that, and it was another festival, and everybody messaged us who was going to that festival because they saw, like, the footage and live streams and stuff from it, and they're like, "Are you throwing cupcakes at this festival? Please, can you throw cupcakes?" And we're like, "Why would we do that? It was just for a birthday." But we got so many messages to do it that we did it at the next festival, and then we had a show the next day, and everybody was asking us, and so it just kind of became the thing. We just started throwing cupcakes at shows, and then anytime we were inside, we would either get, like, the Little Debbie wrapped ones,
Mm.
or we'd get, like, the little, like, squishy toy things that were in the shape of cupcakes, and we would throw them that way, and so it just kind of became a habit. It's like, okay, at shows, at the last song, we throw cupcakes, and it's just kind of a thing.
That's crazy. That's again, like it's just one of those stepping outside the box. You know, you're at a metal show, and then the band's like throwing cupcakes out of it. Like you just, it's an easy way to be remembered, right? Like
Yeah.
it ensures that you're memorable. You could be like, really went and saw that band, and they were throwing cupcakes in the crowd. What was that all about? And they look it up online, and they find, you know, it's easy way to help be memorable, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's really really cool. I mean, you know, we've. Is there anything else from the band's history that you know you want to touch on before we move on to the next segment? Because I don't want to sort of leave you hanging on anything, or if there's anything else you think people should know about before we move on, because you guys have done so much already, and it's really crazy that you know in a couple of years you will have been a touring musician for 10 years and you'll only be 25. Like that, that's crazy. Like most people are just starting to get to that point by the time they're 25. So yeah, like, was there anything else from the history that you think's really cool that you wanted to just be like to brag about a little bit before we moved on?
I think the only other thing that we did during shows, and it wasn't like every show, it was either like a really, really big show that was like sold out or something, or if it was a festival, because we knew there would be a lot of people, we used to take this floaty and it was in the shape of a coffin. It was a giant pink coffin floaty because I wanted to crowd surf, but we were like in skirts and stuff, and we didn't want like anything to be weird. Like we
Mm.
had shorts on and everything, but like
Yeah,
people were
no,
weird at festivals, and
you're
like
it's a
we
big
never wanted to
crowd. You
take
don't.
our
Mm.
chances. And plus, I just didn't want to be dropped either and like fall onto the ground and just be like, like not be able to move. And so I was like, well, I've seen people on like Warped Tour, they go on the floaties. And so we found this giant pink coffin floaty. And during like the heaviest song, we would pull it out and I would jump into it and like crowd surf on the floaty and like just be on like singing in the crowd and stuff that way. So that was, I think the only other like crazy thing we did at shows.
That's really
But
really
yeah, that was
cool.
definitely
I would
the
absolutely that
coolest
would
thing.
absolutely get my attention if I saw a band for the first time and they did that. I would be like, because it's always entertaining, right? You see like Slipknot will do it, and Sid will get out in the dinghy or the inflatable raft
Mhm.
and go all that other stuff. So and I love seeing that. It's great. It's a great way to be memorable and interact with your fans and give them an experience that they are not going to forget. So
Yeah, it
that's
was
really
definitely
really great.
scary though, because there were a few times that I thought they were gonna drop me, and that thing was like rocking the whole time. And uh, the first time we did it, we didn't really know what we were doing, and so they brought me back to the stage, but they didn't like just lift it up, and so they kind of just dumped me out, and I literally like
Oh
fell onto the
no!
stage, like dropped my mic, like flipped over, and I was like, okay. But we figured it out after that. We're like, okay, when we do this, I'm gonna have to like make sure I turn around and they like lift me out like that way, so I can just like
Yeah.
walk out of it. Like
Well, let
it was definitely
security
a process
know.
of learning.
Let security know. So when it comes back to the front, they can like help put it back up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Oh
was definitely
wow.
a learning process.
All right. Okay. Well, let's move on to the quick question quarter, which is always a fun segment. Oh, before we go on, one more question I've got to ask you before you. I know you're moving away from playing bass and singing now, but obviously you spent a lot of time playing bass. What what was your dream bass, and do you have it?
So I played a bass when we did our first album, because the producer had their own instruments. He's like, you don't have to fly up here. We have our own instruments and everything. Um, I played a Schecter something. I think it was a stiletto bass. I played a Schecter stiletto, and I was like, I want whatever model of that bass that I play. I was like, I want this bass, and it was a branded or like a model number that they didn't make anymore, and so there was literally no way I could have it. And then I got reached out to by Schecter a few years ago. I think it was right like during COVID. 'Cause I think it was the NAMM convention that we went to right before COVID, and they reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, we would love to work with you. We know you like our bases. We met you at the convention. Like here's our contact. Like we'd love to send you a bass." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, no way! Like, do you still have this one?" And they're like, "No, we don't make that one anymore." And so I had talked to several people and I was like, "Okay, well, I want a Schecter because I love Schecter basses, but it has to be like light because I am a very small person and I like to swing this thing around stage, and if it's too heavy, like that thing is gonna throw me around stage." And so they were telling me which ones to get, and someone told me to get a Schecter Stealth 5, and I was like, okay, I'll ask them for that one. And so I gave them that one and then a few other ones that people suggested to me. And it was like a while, and I knew someone else who was sponsored by Schecter, and I was like, "Hey, do you know like how long it usually takes?" And she was like, well, there's not like really a specified time. Sometimes like you'll reach out to them, and then a base will just randomly show up on your door." And I was like, "All right, cool." And she's like, "Well, plus like COVID's making things weird, and the shipping is all kinds of weird." I was like, "That's also true." Okay. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll wait. And then a bass showed up on my door randomly one day, and it was a Schecter Stealth 5. And I was like, there's no way that I literally just got sent this. This is so cool. And I started playing it, and then I reached out to this brand called Gloomy Bear, and they were really popular like in the 2000s, and they're like this like scene bear icon thing. And they were making a resurgence. Like, we're gonna be back in Hot Topic, we're gonna be back in like Spencer's and stuff, and we're making our clothing line again. And they were doing a lot of collaborations with like big influencers. And so I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I use your graphic to wrap my bass? Because I really want to put just like the bear and stuff on my bass and make it look cute. Because I've only ever had just all black basses, and I want one to look like weird and crazy." And they're like, "We would love to make custom art for you, and we'll make you a bear in a cheerleader outfit and all this stuff." And so I have it like wrapped with the like pink bear, and then on the back the pink bear's in the cheerleader outfit with GFM. So like when I would flip it over, it would show the bear and everything. And so that one definitely became like my dream bass because I always wanted a Schecter anyway, and then like having it wrapped like that and having it be this like custom bass, I was like, this is literally a dream come true.
Awesome. That's really cool. Schecter do make some good instruments. I had a Schecter Diamond Series Studio 5 for a while, and it was it was amazing. Very, very hot sounding bass. Always had the right kind of tone. All right, well, let's move on to the quick question quarter, shall we? So our fans can get to know you, our listeners can get to know you a little bit better.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
All right, so welcome to the quick question quarter. This is a series of questions that we ask our guest, and they start out easy and they get hard, but it's just rapid fire questions. So here we go. What is the first instrument that you learnt to play?
Piano, actually.
Awesome. The first album that you purchased or that you had purchased for you, basically, first album that you were like, I really, really want this album.
Oh my goodness. Maybe like in A Day to Remember album, I think. The one that has Homesick on it, I think. Maybe not that one. Maybe it's the one that I'm Made of Wax, Larry, What Are You Made Of? It's one of those, I think, was the first one I got.
Okay. What was the first live concert you attended?
I think Skillet was my first one that I went to. I think it was at a Wild Adventures like theme park. They did that every year. My dad knew that we had started getting into rock music, and he was like, "Oh, like there's this Christian rock band. I think you'll like them." And like they had this pyro and everything, and so it was really cool.
That's awesome. What is an instrument you've always wanted to learn but haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Okay, I have two. I've always wanted to play saxophone, and I've always wanted to play violin, but I don't have time, or like I know both of those are really hard to play, so I don't know if I have the like motivation to learn.
No, that's fair enough. I always wanted to learn cello, and then I got one, and it was like being a baby all over again, having to relearn the instrument from scratch. And I ended up dropping it because it was just, Yeah.
Those string instruments are hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it might have helped maybe if I'd gotten one that had there was a cheating one that had like lines on
yeah.
it or fret markings or like shallow frets or something on it instead. Uh,
Mhm.
Now look, you've opened for a lot of bands. You've opened for a lot of really cool bands, so you may have already had the opportunity to do this one, but uh, if you could pick one big band or artist to open a show for, uh, who would it be? Now, I'll put some qualifiers out here. This can be anyone, living or dead, active or not, any stage in their career. Who would your dream support be to open for?
Open for Bring Me the Horizon. That has been one of my favorite bands since I was in middle school, and I have wanted to do something with them, a show or music or something. That has been like the one thing that has been constant is to work with them.
Awesome. Well, hey, reach out to them. You got traction. You got stuff coming up. You reach out to them. You never know. You can make it happen. That'd be awesome. Okay. Who is a band or an artist that you're listening to right now that you believe is seriously underrated and needs more attention?
Um, so there's this band called Stand Atlantic. They're actually from Australia as well.
Yeah.
And they're not really, they're a little heavier than pop punk.
Mm.
But I really like them a lot. I feel like her voice is similar to mine, but her melodies are super crazy. And so I've been trying to listen to her and draw inspiration from how she writes and how she kind of like sings things. Because like she'll sing words in a weird way, but it's like, oh my goodness, why don't I never think to say that word that way? And so they're opening for a lot of big bands right now. And
Mm.
so I'm trying to get a chance to see them. I missed my chance to see them last year in like November because they were literally right by me, and I think I had just gotten back from a writing session or being out of town or something, and so I was like, "There's no way that I can make the show because it's too far of a drive to make it." But like they're
Mm.
right there, and the tickets are cheaper than like the really big concerts because they are still up and coming, which is crazy because they're huge, like to me. But like when compared to like they're opening for bands like I Prevail, like Pierce Veil and stuff like that, and so it's like those are like the really big bands, and um, so like they're obviously way bigger than I am, but they're still like up and coming. So it's like I could literally easily pay for tickets to go see them, and if I don't go see them now, I know they're gonna blow up, and I'm not gonna be able to afford tickets then, and so it's like I'm gonna miss my opportunity. So they're coming back to the States. They have a tour, I think around June, I think. June or July, so I'm trying to make it to one of those shows because I don't want to miss out on seeing them before they like really blow up and I can't afford
Mm.
the tickets anymore.
Okay, and you said it was Stan Atlantic. Is that
Yeah.
awesome? Awesome. Uh, what is something that people may be surprised to learn about you?
Uh, Maybe that I'm almost done with my master's degree. I know every time I say that, people are like, "What?" Because I dual enrolled in high school, and so I finished college early, and so I figured I might as well just get my master's out of the way while
Mm.
I'm on the road and like busy and stuff. So yeah, maybe that I'm almost done with my master's degree, and I'm only 22.
Yeah, what's it in, if you don't mind me asking?
It's in crisis counseling and psychology.
Wow. Okay, that's some heavy stuff too. Yeah, that's the amount of work that you must be putting in is crazy. Yeah, I couldn't do it, and that's why I'm not famous. Uh, okay, I love a couple more questions in this, and then we can move on to the next segment. This is one of my favorite questions. What is the cringiest band name or song name that you've ever been involved with?
So there.
Yeah, this one throws people because they got to think, right? And they got to expose themselves.
Okay, this song was never released, but a lot of people that like heard the demo and everything wanted us to release it. And at the time of writing it, we thought it was like the coolest thing, and it was gonna be like this statement piece of a generation, and like calling out like different generations of people for like looking down on other generations of people. And like now that I like actually just like a year after writing it, like listening back on it, I was like, I don't ever want to release this song. And like it's a cool sounding song, but it just sounds so cheesy to me. And everybody that like when we go on tour, like we'll be like, oh, laughing, like let's show like songs that we never released before. It's like we'll show it to them. We're like, we'll never ever release it. They're like, why? It's a good song. And it's like I feel like it is so cheesy. I would never release this. And it's no hate on the people that we wrote it with because it's always fun writing and with those people and sometimes you just have to get those ideas out and you just don't end up using them. But the title of the song was called We Are Millennium.
Oh,
And that was like the entire chorus was We
oh,
Are
that hurt.
Millennium and like
Yeah.
it was like chopped up like EDM type thing to make it like this like
Mm.
anthem or whatever. And like every time I even like say anything about it, I'm just like,
Wow. You should. That's so funny. I don't know if you're familiar with an Australian grunge band called Silverchair. They were. It was big kind of through the 90s and early 2000s. They actually had a song on their third album called "Anthem for the Year 2000." Great song, but the title you mentioned it just reminded me of that. It really did. But that's We Are Millennium. I get, yeah. I can understand where you're coming from with that.
yeah, it's like why? Why do we think that would be cool?
Well, look, maybe who knows? Maybe you can rework it down the line and find a use for it somewhere. And last question for the quick question quarter is: what is your most controversial musical opinion?
Uh, oh no. So I like okay. So every time I say this, people get mad at me, but I feel like it's not that controversial of a music opinion. I don't like actual country music. I only like the poppy type music or like the modern country music or stuff like the alternative where it's like has metal music behind it and everything. But I don't like classic country music. And everybody gets so mad when I say that, and they're like, "That the music that you like is not real country music." And I was like, "I don't like real country music then. Like I don't like it.
No,
Like
that's
I want to listen to this other stuff."
look. Hey, you like what you like, right? You like what you like. I think you want to know my one. You want to know my one that always gets me a lot of hate. I think Slayer sucks. Like they've got a few good songs, and I understand their position as icons of the industry. I've seen them live. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It takes skill. I'm not denying it takes skill. It just I don't get it. It doesn't vibe with me the way it. And yeah, so so yeah, and I like I do kind of exaggerate that. Like yeah, okay, they're all right, but I just like Slayer sucks, and you just watch half a room of people just go, what? they don't know how to process it. Oh, that was.
I did not just say that.
Yeah, exactly. They get so mad. All right. Well, there we go. That was the quick question quarter. It is time to move on to the fuck off files.
No!
Fuck off files.
Perfect. So, if this is your first time listening to the Two Dudes Talk Music podcast, we get to the fuck off files. This is where we talk to our guests and we ask them to tell us 3 things that if they could just be like Thanos and collect all of the Infinity Stones and just snap their fingers and fuck off some stuff out of the music industry, what would it be and why? So, Maggie, what's the first thing that you would? I'll say F off out of the industry. I don't want to keep saying that. I don't want to keep dropping that one. But yeah, what's the first thing you would get rid of out of the industry and why?
I think, especially recently, because I've been seeing a lot of people talk about it, and it's something that we experienced definitely quite a bit on the anytime we would play general market shows or clubs and stuff. Merch percentages, like venues taking them, and it's so that is the only way that bands make money a lot of the times, because a lot of times venues aren't even paying you or they're making you do a door split, and there's no way you can make money on doing a door split. And I get if you're Red Hot Chili Peppers and they're doing this giant Live Nation arena tour, that stuff makes sense because you have to pay vendors and do stuff like that. But if you're a tiny up and coming band who's playing like local shows and stuff like that. Like merch percentages don't make any sense to me on that aspect. Especially if like there's no give back from the venue. It's like, okay, well, if you do that, like people have said, well, why can't bands have a percentage of your drink sales and stuff like that? Because it's like, okay, you're taking a percentage of ours, why do we not get a percentage of yours? And it definitely cuts into a lot of like a band's way to make money, because there was definitely a few times, even on that last tour that we did with Fozzy, it's a lot of the venues took major cuts, or like festivals would take major cuts. Like we would have made good money tonight, but we had to give so much back to the venue or back to the festival. Like we lost a ton of money like that night, because we had to like we would have been like fine, like, oh yeah, everybody gets extra bonuses tonight, we made good money. It's like, okay, well, we are like pinching our pennies now because we had to give so much back. So I think definitely that would be a big one.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you know that you know my co-hosts and I, we've talked about on the podcast quite a lot in the past, and it seems to be much more prevalent in the US than it does in Australia. Thankfully, in Australia, not a lot of venues are doing that yet. Hopefully, it doesn't catch on. It's yeah. I don't know. I don't understand. Like if they're supplying people to help handle the merch and to handle the sales and stuff, that's one thing, right? I get it. Those people need to be paid. I can kind of understand it then. But even then, it seems like, you know, you just the venue's making all of this money. Just pay the person to do the job. Like,
Yeah.
it's yeah, 100% agree with you on that one. Like it's we've talked about it before multiple times. So all right, bands, and I was actually gonna, because you mentioned it earlier, and if what didn't come up again, I was actually gonna try and come back to it again to get your thoughts on it. But there we go. It's we number one in the fuck off files. What's your second one?
Maybe like you have to have so many followers to get anywhere, like that type of thing. Where it's like, okay, well, you have to. I think social media playing such a big part of it maybe now is an issue, because now anybody can be a musician and anybody can instantly get viral and famous, and that now people are going to take those people on tour regardless of these people that have been working super hard for years, and their social media isn't as big as theirs because they never had a viral video, but it's getting there. But because those other people had viral videos, they're going to be picked way quicker than anybody else. And I think it's just it is a lot of the algorithm thing pushing it, and like you're saying when we were talking in the beginning, like if you're not posting, if you're not having a new song like immediately, like you basically don't exist anymore. So I think maybe that would be something, because yeah, there's good behind it, because it's like, okay, well, obviously if you have followers, then you are more relevant than people that don't have as many followers, but it's not always that case, and a lot of the times when people go viral super fast, it doesn't always translate, and so sometimes people can't put butts in the seats. And so I know that's something we had like run into a few times. It's like, okay, well, it was between us and this band, but because they were a lot more popular on social media, they got picked, but nobody came to the show, and it's like it gets frustrating. And I never want to discredit people who are working their butts off in social media, because I know that social media takes a ton of hard work from somebody who also does it. But I think having it play such a big role in the deciding factor has hurt a lot of bands, because it's kind of like taken advantage of a little bit.
Yeah, definitely there. And I mean, on a similar kind of angle, what band was it? There was a band, I think it might have been I Prevail. One of their songs went crazy on TikTok, and people were going to the show. Like all these people were going to the shows to see them, and then like leaving after that song.
It was the I Prevail tour, but they were coming for Pierce the Veil,
Pierce
because
the
the Pierce
Veil,
the Veil
that's it,
song
yes.
went viral, and then they left after them, and nobody like stayed for the rest of the
Yeah.
show. And it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
That doesn't. I would have never thought to do that before. Like that's so rude.
Yeah, I know I know it's not quite the thing you were talking about, but it did remind me of that kind of approach, right? Like that kind of stuff happens, and
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, you have to feel bad for Pierce the Veil as well, right? Because
Yeah.
they put so much work in for everything else, and then a song goes viral on TikTok through something that they may not even have had anything to do with. And yeah, okay, it's great that the shows are selling out and that people are going to see that band, and they might pick up some new, more solid fans from it. But like the people that are showing up just for the song and then leaving, like they're fickle. They're not going to stick around. They're not going to buy the merch. They're not going to, buy the albums or anything. So it's yeah, yeah, it's a bit ridiculous the way social media is influencing music these days. And lastly, what would your third one be?
Uh,
And these don't have to be huge things either. These can be little annoyances as well, right? They don't. It's just whatever you could think would. I could do without that.
maybe like this isn't like a huge deal thing, but like all the name dropping that people do is so unnecessary. Like when you're trying to like meet people in the industry or like there's one thing of like reminiscence, like, oh, like have you ever been on tour with this band? It's like, oh yeah, like this is blah 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 blah. But then there's certain people that you meet and they're like you know immediately that they are trying to like name drop and like talk down to you, like condescendingly and being like, well, I went on tour with this band and I did this show and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like we're all just it's a job. Like
Mm,
it's really cool and I would have been happy for you if you would have worded it differently. But you're talking down to me like I'm never have played shows ever before. So I think just that kind of mindset is very weird. And the like being in the industry and growing up in it, I've seen it quite a bit, and it's easy to like start getting into that mindset too because like, oh well, that's how I'm supposed to make connections. I'm supposed to like prove to people that I've played shows with bands and stuff. It's like you don't have to prove anything to anybody. Like if they don't want to believe in you and support you, like that's shame on them. Like
mm,
let your music and let your personality speak for yourself. You don't have to over talk and like push yourself down these people's throats and convince them that they need to listen to you or they're stupid. Like it's like that's not really necessary.
mm, And I bet you get a lot of that all the time, right? Being as young as you are, I bet you get all these people that come up thinking, oh yeah, this is like, this little girly band. It's like their first tour or whatever. Like they don't know who you are. They see the opening act show up for the show, and it's this all girl band, and they see how young you all are, and they're just like, oh okay, like what, whatever.
Like,
And
let me
then
tell you like what the music industry is really like.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, and
oh,
you're like,
okay.
I've probably been doing it longer than you. Like, what are you talking about?
It's like you started playing last year.
Yeah, right. Because and look, that's something that I like. That's something that I've struggled with from the other side too. Because like, okay, yeah, I haven't done like top tier stuff or anything, but like I've been doing music for a while and I've made a lot of the mistakes. And now I'm out there playing shows with bands that are made up of people that were born after I started playing music. And one, that makes me feel hella old. Like I get to that, I'm just like, oh, I'm aged. But also, I talk to them about stuff, and I'm like really paranoid that I'm going to come across as condescending if I'm talking to them, or like if they're telling me about their plan for something, and and this is where I try and be like, if I feel like I want to give them advice because I can see what they're trying to do, and like, look, I've done that, and I think it's a bad idea because of X. If I feel that desire to offer them that kind of advice, I try and remind myself to put the question in first. May I offer you some advice? So that because otherwise, if I just go out there offering advice, like you're talking down to them, and I never want to come. I'm always hyper aware that it'd be very easy for me to come across as you know that middle-aged guy that tried it and failed, but now he thinks he knows everything just because he's been doing it for a
Yeah.
while. Um,
Yeah, and I personally like I am all for like getting advice from people. I want to always make sure people like give me a rundown of what they did, what didn't work, what did work, and
yeah,
I want to like soak it up like as a sponge. And I know there are lots of people out there that have the same mindset, but there are some people that don't want any advice at all. They want to do it their way and figure it out, and like that's okay. But like I always try to make sure like letting people like advice from people who have done it before, like that is necessarily and or that's necessary. That's gonna keep you out of a lot of trouble. And respect for your elders is a very important thing, and respect for authority is important because they've obviously been doing this life thing longer than you have, and
Mm.
they're gonna keep you from making dumb mistakes. But I think it needs to go both ways. There needs to be respect from both sides. Like you were saying, it's like, okay, well, I need to make sure like that they want that advice, because if they're not available, like emotionally available to that, then it's obviously just going to be like, oh, well, they're just talking down to me type thing. So I think
Yeah, yeah.
respect on both ends is very necessary, and it's not super common, unfortunately, but I think it's from hurt on both sides, and just frustration from both sides. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's awesome. Those are some really, really strong picks there. They are. I mean, look, we've had everything from, like people wanting to get rid of like mute. They wish they could get rid of music streaming or erase the certain music streaming never happened because that's killed. It's the idea of CD sales and devalued music in the mind of the consumer and all that stuff. We've had people wanting to get rid of buy-ons, where the bands are going to pay to get on a tour or something. Or we even had a band say that they would get rid of slap bass. Now, as a bass player, I was really offended. I was just like, no, that's. But yeah, so those are some really, really good ones, though. That's awesome. Thank you so much for those. Right, so look, we're getting up to near the end of things here. Once again, if you're listening to this and you want to check out Maggie's stuff, the social medias are all still under Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh, right? Is that still where most of it's under, or you've got your own official ones now separate from that?
So I have my own official ones now. They're all official Magdalene Rose. So everything is matching there. We had to make a new Facebook page. So the Facebook page for GFM is still up and running. And then we'll be making a post like on there about us moving onto a new page for Magdalene Rose. But all the pages are the same tag. It's just official Magdalene Rose.
Awesome, wonderful. And you've got the Patreon as well, you were saying. So if people really dig it and they want to throw some support behind you in that way, that's something that's available as well. That's also official Magdalene Rose, is that right?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Just before we take it home, any chance of an Australian tour?
I would absolutely love to. I've wanted to come play in Australia for so long. So I have been bugging the people that I'm working with. I was like, I want to go overseas. I especially want to go to Australia. And they're like, okay, well, we got to get you some US tours under your feet so we can like get your name out there now that you're under a different name touring. But then that way we can work on getting you with a band that's already going over there, and that'll be way easier because they already have dates and stuff established. So we're working on it. So hopefully it'll happen sooner rather than later.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really good. Best time, pro tip, autumn or spring is probably the best time to come. Don't do summer. It's going to be stupidly hot. I mean, you're in Florida, so you're probably used to the stuff like summer being ridiculous. And winter, like, yeah, if you're doing Australia in winter, somewhere like the northern stuff's going to be okay. But once you start getting down to like towards Melbourne and Sydney in winter, no good. It's awful. It's awful. So,
Oh my goodness. All right.
but yeah, if you do ever tee anything up to come out to Australia, and like 100%, like we'll try and be there. We'll see if we can tee something up and make something happen as well. If you need any suggestions on Australian bands and stuff that they might want to get on, like let me know. Like, because there's so many of them, and it's popping off right now too. It really is. It's like kind of was dying down a little bit in the 2010s, but it's really built up and is coming back for sure. There's so much talent out here. And in Australia, and look, obviously, it's definitely a beautiful country. I'm sure you'll love it if you were to come out here for anything. Before we go, is there anything else at all that you want to push for people? Obviously, you've got the single coming out, so people like what they've heard from GFM, and they want to follow that. It's all official Magdalene Rose on everything. Is there anything else that you want to push, talk about, let people know about before we take it home and wrap it up?
I know that we are, like I was saying, working on a lot of U.S. tour dates right now, and we're currently booking a West Coast run, so that'll be happening early summer, and then we're working on booking out the entire summer. So if there is a show near you, definitely come out. I would love to see you at a show. And if you don't know if there's going to be a show, I post all of the dates and all the information about the venues and tour and everything on my pages. So definitely follow me there so you can be the first ones to know and find out if we're coming near you.
Awesome. Great. Well, yeah, thank you very, very much for coming on for this one.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I had an amazing time chatting with Maggie and getting to know all about the history of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and what she's got planned coming up for her solo stuff or touring under her own name with a new band. So definitely make sure you go and follow her on all of the socials. Magdalene Rose Official. It's all there. It'll be the spelling that's in the title of the podcast. Yeah, so as previously, as I said at the top of the podcast there, we do have the paid subscriptions available on Twitch now, which gets you around the ads and you get some custom emotes, some cool stuff like that, and you just can help support us a little bit, makes it a little easier for myself and Kyle to do the thing. If you don't want to do a paid subscription, obviously you can throw us a follow on Twitch, like, share, subscribe, it all helps, all that good stuff. We do still have the Gymna Rocks giveaway coming up. So if you are listening to this before the end of April 2023, you can head on over to our Twitch page, give us a follow there, and we will be rewarding one lucky follower with a double pass to Gymna Rocks Music Festival that takes place in Queensland at the end of April in 2023. It's a 2-day camping festival. There'll be 20 plus bands there. So it's a great time. I went to the one last year. I believe Kyle's going to be up and attending as well, so you'll be able to meet him in person and just have a grand old time. Other than that, we are still also looking for your crazy stories from the road or from gigs or anything. So if you've been at a gig and something wild has happened, or if you're a band that's got a crazy story from the tour or from when you were in the studio, please hit us up, 2dudestalkmusic@gmail.com. We would love to hear the story and read it aloud on the stream and share that with everybody. We will change names to keep both innocent and guilty parties anonymous because we don't want anyone getting in trouble for sharing their stories. But yeah, we'd love to hear from that. Anyway, other than that, that's all from me. I'm off to continue the rest of my holiday. But thank you so much for tuning into this one, and I will catch y'all another time. Peace out.